Hold on, did I not mention it? Jake, our client today, is French. Just before our meeting, my employer revealed something shocking. He remained silent till the very end. Michelle, our CEO, appeared as pale as a ghost when you glanced at her. This was an issue for Michelle, who has horrible French. Jake, meanwhile, grinned smugly as he observed her. Michelle, based on your response, it appears that you were unable to attend this meeting. I said that women shouldn't be CEOs for this reason. It's absurd. It was obvious that Jake had set up this entire situation as a trap. All I could do was fidget, anxiously. But after seeing Michelle's face, I decided what to do. I couldn't remain a menial employee indefinitely. I gathered my strength and spoke up. Michelle and Jake turned to face me, their eyes wide with surprise. I'm Luke Carter, and I'm 35. I work for a trading company as a typical salesperson. I currently live alone after leaving the rigid home where my parents reared me. My everyday routine could be characterized as simple, and both my personal and professional lives are uneventful. I just went through each day, having convinced myself that it was okay. But there was no use in thinking that. I squandered my days being indifferent. One person would always gladly start a discussion with me at work, despite my best efforts to keep a low profile. That individual was our company's CEO, Michelle Sanders. She is incredibly gorgeous and older than me. She is said to be in her early 40s, but she appears 10 years younger. Michelle abruptly took over the position a few months ago following the death of her father, the former CEO. Most people realized that Michelle was a fantastic fit for the CEO post because she had been a candidate for it for a while. Michelle, a recent graduate of a prominent university, has a long history of success in sales since entering the company. Her upbeat disposition and friendly manner also contributed to the positive work environment. Some people were perhaps originally opposed to a young woman holding the position of CEO. But their reservations were swiftly allayed after witnessing Michelle's extraordinary abilities and leadership. Nobody still doesn't acknowledge her as the legitimate CEO. Except, of course, for a few people. Jake, I've been informed that a sales meeting is scheduled for 4:00 p.m. today. I had been asking to go. Could I come along? Oh, you learned, didn't you? Women are really perceptive and enjoy gossip, aren't they? I'll give you that you're adept at spotting information. Okay, you are welcome to join. Thank you, Jake. Our CEO is treated condescendingly by this individual, Jake Turner, for some reason. He is the head of the sales department and my boss. One of the few individuals in the organization that harbors animosity toward Michelle is Jake. I could only see their exchange from the sidelines, because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I wasn't concerned about a young female CEO being harassed by her senior staff member. It was a little painful, though. However, it appears that my passive observation was observed. Jake caught my gaze and stormed over, yelling, "Hey, Luke, stop zoning out. You're useless. Enough as it is. Get out there and bring in some sales." "Yes, sir." As I scrambled to get ready, Jake smirked mockingly. A high school graduate? What a worthless loser. Those words triggered unwanted memories, flooding my mind with fragments of my past. How can you not understand something so simple, you useless idiot? Your brothers are so accomplished. Why are you such a failure? The scolding and harsh words from my dad during my childhood still haunted me, refusing to fade away. As I left the office, I was dazed and leaned against the wall. What a pathetic thing, for me to still be dragging this around. Then, a voice called out from behind me. "Luke, are you okay?" "Oh, Michelle." I never imagined she'd see me in a moment like this. I quickly straightened up, pacing on a smile to hide my embarrassment. "I'm fine. I'm heading out to make some sales now." "I see. Oh, Wait a moment. Michelle walked over to a nearby cafe, bought a cup of coffee, and handed it to me. A little power boost for our hardworking salesman. Do your best, Luke. Thank you so much. Even for someone like me, just an ordinary employee, Michelle always paid attention and showed kindness to me. The coffee she handed me was from my favorite shop. That day, I felt more motivated at work than I had in a long time. One day, I stumbled upon Jake griping about Michelle again. Since we worked in the same department, I often overheard his complaints. Jake, acting smug as always, was talking to one of his sycophantic coworkers. Bah, having a woman as CEO really lowers morale. For one thing, other companies won't take us seriously. And she's all dressed up and flaunting herself. It's like she's just playing at work. Don't you agree? Totally. She's such an eyesore. What ridiculous complaints. As I sat at my desk, working on some reports, I found myself recalling Michelle's smile from the day she gave me that coffee. Without thinking, I muttered to myself, since she became CEO, the atmosphere is definitely brighter. And she's not just dressing up for no reason. It's a strategy to ensure she's seen as an equal among other CEOs. It was one of my bad habits, talking to myself without realizing it. I often let my thoughts slip out loud. When Jake glared at me sharply, I finally realized I had spoken my true feelings. What did you say, Luke? Are you trying to argue with me, huh? Oh no, I didn't mean. I was startled, but it was already too late. Jake walked over, a nasty smirk spreading across his face. You've been bewitched by that pretty-faced, Did she seduce you or something? She would never do anything like that. Listen up. Women are inferior to men. Take Michelle, for example. She can't even read French. Documents and often comes begging me for help. How can you respect a CEO like that? A woman in charge is just the beginning of the end. It was clear that Jake desperately wanted to look down on Michelle. For some reason, his words made me angry, and I clenched my teeth in frustration. Just then, Michelle walked into the sales department, her presence cutting through the tense atmosphere. Sorry to interrupt while you're busy. Excuse me, Jake, I have a small favor to ask. What can I do for you, Michelle? I felt flustered by her presence, but Jake responded with a smug laugh. Michelle looked a bit troubled as she spoke. There's something I'd like your help with. It's about a document in French. Again. Do you realize you're wasting other people's time? This is really inconvenient. No. I'm sorry. Jake, looking triumphant, began to walk out with Michelle. In the brief moment they passed through the department, Michelle gave me a faint smile. Maybe she was trying to be considerate. That conversation had definitely been overheard. As I watched them leave with mixed emotions, a female coworker at the desk next to mine spoke up. I heard Michelle has been attending French lessons. French lessons? Does she even have time for that? She's probably squeezing it in somehow, even with her busy schedule. I really respect her. She's not arrogant and genuinely cares about the employees. Like you said, she's the reason the office feels so much brighter. Her cheerful smile made me blush, and I scratched my head awkwardly. It made me realize that there were definitely people who recognized Michelle's abilities. Since that day, however, Jake's hostility toward me had only grown stronger. I knew speaking up in support of Michelle would lead to this, so I braced myself. However, every time I heard Jake's yelling, it made me anxious and brought back unpleasant memories. His sarcasm and way of shouting were eerily similar to my dad's, whom I had always struggled to deal with. One day, Jake instructed me to accompany him to a business meeting. He seemed unusually excited as he explained. A major corporation has taken an interest in our product. They reached out to say they're eager to do business with us, If this deal goes through, we're looking at $50 million. No, maybe $100 million easily. That's incredible. It's rare for a single deal to bring in such massive revenue for our company. To my surprise, Jake wanted me to join him for such a high-stakes meeting. Why not Ben instead of me? Jake had a favorite coworker, Ben, who was always eager to flatter him. Why ask me? Ben's still inexperienced and way too impulsive. I'm worried he might offend the client. You, on the other hand, are quiet and unlikely to screw up. I see. In other words, he considered me a safer bet than his other coworkers. Even so, the opportunity to attend a significant business negotiation was exciting for me. I'd be happy to join you. Good. Michelle will be coming along too, so you'll also be in charge of driving on the day. Understood. It made sense for the CEO to attend such a significant business meeting, but I still felt a little nervous. It was my first time accompanying Michelle to a negotiation. For the first time in a long while, I threw myself into preparations with serious dedication. Then, the day of the meeting arrived. Driving the car, I brought Jake and Michelle to the client's company. Once we were shown to the meeting room, I was shocked by the members waiting there. 2 French businessmen were seated inside. Seeing Michelle tense up, Jake let out a quiet chuckle. Oh, didn't I mention it? Today's clients are French. After all, this is an international corporation. Oh, and since their English isn't great, let's keep this in French. They usually have an interpreter, but I asked them to skip it today. You've been taking French lessons, right, Michelle? You should be fine now. At the last minute, Jake revealed critical information. Even if Michelle had been attending French lessons, handling a negotiation in French would still be extremely difficult. When I glanced at her in concern, her face had gone completely pale. For someone who struggled with French, this was undeniably a crisis. Jake, of course, watched her struggle with a smug grin. Michelle, from the look of it, you're not cut out for this meeting, huh? This is why I said women aren't suited to be CEOs. It's ridiculous. It was obvious that this was Jake's way of harassing her. He must have been planning to claim all the credit for today's big deal and crush Michelle's confidence in the process. The clients, who didn't understand the conversation, simply waited to see how we would proceed. Michelle, seemingly well aware of Jake's intentions, trembled quietly. Sitting beside her, I took a deep breath. I had spent my days hiding behind the mask of being an incompetent, bottom-tier employee, avoiding attention and responsibility. I feared that showing my abilities would lead to being judged, so I did everything I could to stay under the radar. But now wasn't the time to stay in the shadows. I made up my mind and spoke up. It was the first time in years I had spoken French. Surprisingly, the foreign language I had once been familiar with flowed easily from my mouth. I greeted the clients in French and suggested we begin the meeting. Both Jake and Michelle, who had been caught off guard, snapped to attention and scrambled to prepare the documents. Jake, seemingly well prepared, launched into his presentation in fluent French. During his presentation, I leaned over to Michelle and whispered, "I'll be here to support you. Just answer the parts you're comfortable with, okay?" "Got it," she replied, straightening her back with determination. Jake kept glancing our way while doing his best with the presentation. It was a $100 million deal, so naturally, he was giving it his all. However, midway through his presentation, one of the clients tilted their head in confusion. It seemed that a mispronunciation had led to a strange phrase. Realizing this quickly, I stepped in and interrupted the conversation, speaking in French. "Excuse me, what he meant to say was actually this." Once I addressed the issue, the clients began directing their questions toward me as well. From that point on, Jake and I primarily handled the product explanations. Michelle seemed to be following along with the conversation, at least during the listening portions. Whenever something was unclear, I translated for her. And when her responses lacked detail, I filled in the gaps. Before I knew it, the meeting had progressed with me acting as an interpreter. Fortunately, the clients had been interested in our product from the start, so the contract was finalized smoothly. At the end of the meeting, one of the clients turned to me with a warm smile and said, "Your French is very polished. Have you spent time in France?" "Yes, I lived in Paris for a few years." "I see. Listening to your French brings back the familiar atmosphere of my home country. I look forward to working with you again." As we exchanged these words, I noticed quiet surprise on both Jake and Michelle's faces. After leaving the client's building, Jake, who had been uncharacteristically quiet until then, suddenly raised his voice. It seemed he had been holding back his frustration as he now glared at me with a dissatisfied expression. If you can speak French, why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Sorry, I didn't think it was necessary to mention it before." "I can't believe I've been disrespected like this. First of all, how does a high school graduate like you speak so fluently? Keeping that hidden just proves what a gloomy little coward you are." I didn't want to talk to Jake about my personal background, so I kept quiet. Thankfully, Michelle gently stepped in to diffuse the situation. "Jake, we were lucky to have his French skills today. There's no need to be so harsh." "Lucky? Oh, I'm sure you feel like you were saved, don't you? Let's face it. If it weren't for me and Luke, a failure of a CEO who can barely speak French would have just been a decorative figurehead sitting at the table." Hearing those words made me snap, and I looked up sharply. Even during the meeting, Michelle had worked hard to keep up with the discussion and contributed to the conversation. Her presence helped ease the otherwise tense atmosphere, thanks to her warm smile. In fact, the clients had even complimented her, saying her confident and composed demeanor was truly admirable. She had also bonded with one of the female representatives over their shared interest in cooking, even exchanging contact information and forming a friendly connection. Michelle has a rare charm that allows her to quickly bridge gaps and build relationships with people. I respect her deeply for that. So instead of addressing Jake, I turned to Michelle and spoke directly, intending to tell her the truth. "Would you be surprised if I told you I got into Harvard at the top of my class?" "What? Huh." Michelle looked shocked, and Jake burst into laughter at my sudden statement. "What kind of nonsense is that? If you're going to make up stories, at least try harder. You? At Harvard? You're just a high school grad." "Yes, my final degree is high school. I did get into Harvard, but I dropped out after leaving to study abroad." Now that I mentioned it, Michelle suddenly looked at me with realization. I'd remember hearing something from my father. He said there was someone at our company who had been admitted to Harvard at the top of their class. He mentioned they were quiet but very capable and reliable. But when I checked resumes, there was no one like that, so I thought, it was strange. That must have been you. Yes. Since I dropped out, I was too embarrassed to list it, so I only put down my high school education. Did the former CEO really say that about me? I recalled the face of Michelle's father, our previous CEO. He understood my situation and was the one who brought me into the company. Even when he discovered my hidden French skills, he didn't reprimand me. Instead, he laughed and said, "Then I'll rely on you discreetly whenever we need French from now on." As I was lost in nostalgic thoughts, Jake's stunned voice broke through. "Wait, is it true? You got into Harvard at the top of your class?" "Yes, I was in Harvard's literature department." "That's why your French is so fluent." Jake groaned in disbelief. He was probably feeling humiliated because someone he looked down on had attended a university more prestigious than his own. He seemed to wrestle with this realization for a while, but then pointed at me with a defiant expression. So what? You're still a useless nobody. I could have handled that level of French just as well. But Luke was correcting your mistakes too. Calling him useless is a bit harsh, don't you think? Michelle interjected. Shut up. You're just a decorative CEO. I was hoping to see you break down and cry today. But what a letdown. This is so frustrating. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and stared at him in shock. Did you really use a $100 million business deal to pursue such a petty goal? He had no right to call himself the head of the sales department. Thinking about all the preparation that went into this day, I felt anger boiling inside me. I'm not one to get angry easily, but this time I raised my voice. Did you really withhold information about the clients for something so trivial, Jake? I've completely lost respect for you. Lost respect? You've got a lot of nerve, Luke. Just because you managed to shine a little today. You think you're hot stuff. Maybe not. But one thing I can't tolerate is you mocking Michelle. This was the first time I stood up to Jake, but in truth, the spark had been there all along. I had always been unable to stomach the way Jake treated Michelle with such disdain. Luke. I wondered what Michelle thought about what I had just said. Unable to meet her gaze, I kept my eyes fixed on Jake, glaring. Jake shrugged, looking annoyed. This is ridiculous, sucking up to a woman like that. Whatever. I'll swing by some other clients before heading back. No way am I riding in the same car as you two. With that, Jake stormed off, leaving just me and Michelle behind. We decided to head back to the office together. As I drove, Michelle sat in the back seat. She caught my eye through the rearview mirror and gave me a small smile. You really made Jake mad this time. It's fine. He's probably just stopping by a cafe or something. He doesn't have any documents or materials for other clients, and there aren't any distribution channels in this area anyway. Impressive, Luke. You seem to know everything. Her expression was different from usual, and for a moment, my heart skipped a beat. Then, her next words made it race even more. Will you tell me now why you've been hiding your true self? Yes, but it's a pretty silly reason. Feeling like I could trust her, I began to share. I told her the embarrassing past I had never been able to reveal to anyone else. In my family, education was always a serious matter. Elite education might sound impressive, but in reality, it was pure Spartan discipline. My dad, a highly educated man and the CEO of a large corporation, was especially strict with his children. After my mom passed away when I was in the 3rd grade, his strict approach became even harsher. As the youngest of 3 brothers, I was slower to learn than the other 2, and was frequently compared to and belittled because of it. Can't you even understand something this simple, you useless idiot? Your brothers are so accomplished. Why are you such a failure? No matter how much I cried and apologized, it didn't matter. I was sometimes tied to a tree or sent to bed without dinner. Seeing me in that state, my older brothers seemed relieved that they weren't the ones facing his wrath and kept their distance. My dad often justified his actions by saying he was raised the same way. In our household, anything less than first place on a test was unacceptable. Over time, I lost confidence in myself and became increasingly withdrawn. All 3 of us brothers got into Harvard, but I was the only one who didn't graduate. They probably thought I was just fooling around while studying abroad. My dad eventually stopped paying for my tuition. That's awful. Well, I did extend my time abroad, so dropping out was inevitable, I guess. Part of it was my way of rebelling against him. By leaving Harvard, the university he wanted me to attend, I felt a small sense of satisfaction. In the end, it was the path I chose for myself. Michelle listened to my story with a pained expression. Trying to lighten the mood, I forced a bright smile. Even so, I'm really glad I studied abroad. At first, It was just to improve my language skills, but being overseas exposed me to different people and lifestyles. It helped me realize how big the world is and how narrow my own perspective had been. When I returned home, my dad, who used to seem so intimidating, looked a bit smaller to me. Though, to be honest, he still scares me a little. "Luke, you're strong, aren't you?" "Not at all. I'm not strong." The reason I couldn't stand up to Jake before was that he reminded me of my dad, and I was too scared to confront him. Loud older men terrify me. But today, for the first time, I fought back. And it was thanks to Michelle. You're the strong one, Michelle. As a young woman, I'm sure you've had to deal with people like Jake who underestimate you. Yet you're always kind to the staff and maintain your composure, even with someone like Jake. Thank you. But I think that's because of my father. Your father. The previous CEO. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Michelle smile and nod. Yes, he used to tell me, if you want your employees to trust you, become someone worthy of their trust. Don't demand it. So, no matter what, I try to endure and keep working hard. Though I'll admit, today really wore me out. For the first time, Michelle let out a soft laugh. That's why I'm still grateful. Thank you. I'm counting on you from now on, Luke. Of course. It's my pleasure. Today, I felt like I had gotten closer to Michelle. With the success of the deal, I returned to the office with her in unusually high spirits. The successful outcome of the major deal that day brought a sense of hope and optimism to the entire company. She even promised generous bonuses for the year, which thrilled everyone. As for me, this marked the moment I stopped hiding my abilities. From then on, I took on translation work that had previously been handled by Jake. Luke, I'm so glad you speak French. It was always hard to ask Jake for help because he'd respond with sarcastic remarks or use it as an excuse to brag. So that's what was going on. Because of that, there were some tasks that got held up. I think you'll be a lot busier from now on. As the employee predicted, my workload increased significantly. If I could handle all these tasks, the company's sales would surely rise. With that in mind, I made it a point to take on as many assignments as possible. I was incredibly busy, but working with French again after such a long time was enjoyable, and I didn't mind the overtime. Michelle also provided special allowances for the extra work, which boosted my motivation even further. This might be the first time I've ever thought of work as genuinely enjoyable. In the midst of this, there were two people who seemed troubled. It was Jake and B. Jake, whose presence in the office had faded significantly, started showing signs of frustration. This is so irritating. Why isn't the work coming to me? Sure, he went to Harvard, but he's a dropout. Just a useless, half-baked nobody. Well, Jake, to be honest, you can be pretty intimidating. I get why people would find it easier to go to Luke. What did you say, Ben? How dare you talk back to me like that? This sparked an argument between Jake and Ben, escalating into a workplace conflict. As tempers flared, things got out of hand, and they started physically fighting. Despite the efforts of others to break it up, they continued, even damaging computers and important office equipment in the process. This incident was the final straw for Michelle. Furious, she announced that Jake would be demoted from his management position and held both of them responsible for the repair costs. Jake, to help you cool your head, I'm reassigning you to another department. What? Don't you dare order me around. You're just a woman. The demotion and reassignment had deeply wounded Jake's pride. In response, he submitted his resignation. I've had enough of a company run by a woman. I'll quit on my own terms. Boasting about joining a larger company, Jake quit with great bravado. Ben, his loyal follower, also found it uncomfortable to stay and decided to leave the company as well. With these troublesome figures gone, Michelle could focus on leading without distractions, and I felt a huge sense of relief. But then something unexpected happened. My dad suddenly showed up at the office in the middle of my workday. He appeared without warning, still carrying the same imposing presence as ever. He glared at me as I stood before him. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I recently hired someone at my company, a man named Jake." Hearing my dad mention Jake's name shocked me. To my surprise, Jake had actually managed to follow through on his bold claim of joining a larger company. And of all places, it turned out to be my dad's company. However, my dad didn't have a very favorable impression of him. He harshly remarked that Jake had exaggerated his abilities during the interview and wasn't as competent as he claimed to be. He also mentioned that Jake had been badmouthing me. "I was surprised when he mentioned your name. Jake claimed you stole his work and forced him out of the company." "I never did anything like that." "I thought it sounded suspicious too. You'd never do something like that. That's why I decided to investigate." My dad's words left me stunned. Again, I was surprised he had looked into it. But what shocked me even more was his apparent trust in me. "Did you really believe I wouldn't do such a thing?" "Well, it was just a basic investigation into the recent state of your company. And what I found was clear. The deals you handled have significantly boosted the company's performance, and its overall results have improved as well. I also learned that you're now the head of the sales department. That young CEO of yours may be inexperienced, but she's quite skilled. I've heard praise for her from every corner." I couldn't help but think how happy Michelle would be to hear such words. Still, I couldn't ignore my lingering questions. "Dad, what exactly is your purpose in coming here today?" I swallowed hard and asked him. For the first time, my dad, who had been avoiding eye contact until now, looked directly at me and bowed his head. "Luke, I want to apologize to you. I was a terrible father. God, seeing you during this investigation made me realize many things. I think I was so obsessed with academic achievements that I overlooked what was truly important in you all." He explained that the reason he had enforced such strict and harsh discipline was that his own father had done the same to him. He believed it was the reason he had achieved his current position, so he applied the same methods to his children. But somewhere along the way, he had gone too far. He admitted that he had placed too much emphasis on education and had sacrificed the time he could have spent with his children as a father. Recently, Kyle and Sean have both started pushing back against me. My brothers? Yes, they confronted me, saying how terrifying I had seemed to them when they were little. Because of that, they're struggling in their lives now. They blame me for focusing solely on their academics and neglecting their emotional needs. And honestly, they weren't wrong. It hit a sore spot for me. Now they've practically cut ties with me. I was stunned to hear about my brothers. Both of them had graduated from Harvard without issue. Kyle had joined my dad's company, and Sean had become a doctor. I never imagined things hadn't been going well for them. Then Jake joined my company and mentioned you. That's when I started looking into you. Frankly, I didn't think someone who had rebelled against me like you could be doing well. But my dad lifted his head and with a hint of relief said, "You found your place at this company and are showing your true potential. The one who defied me the most is the one who's standing the strongest on his own 2 feet. Luke, I'm proud of you." Dad, the lingering tension between us started to dissolve. It felt like I was finally freeing myself from the grip of my dad's shadow that had clung to me for so many years. Over the years, it was my aging dad himself who finally broke the chains of his strict ways. Even if it's too late to apologize now, even if I'm accused of offering a self-serving apology, I'll accept that. All I could do was shake my head. I couldn't find the right words. My dad gave a bitter smile and stood up. "I won't appear in front of you again for a while. As for Kyle and Sean, I'll try to visit them someday to apologize properly. My dad is now on a journey of atonement. Understanding this, I bowed my head toward my departing father, because I was grateful that he had gone out of his way to apologize. That's why I decided I would forgive him. As I stepped out of the room where we'd been talking, Michelle happened to be there. Is your guest all set? Yes, we finished our conversation. At that moment, I must have been wearing a calm expression. Michelle simply replied with a gentle, I see, and we returned to work. Her kindness and not prying further was something I deeply appreciated. After that, our company continued to grow rapidly. We rebuilt the office building and expanded our sales channels internationally. Before I knew it, a year had flown by. One day, I heard some gossip about Jake. It seemed that after joining my dad's company, Jake had struggled significantly. Apparently, he couldn't keep up with the demands and eventually quit. Just as my dad had predicted, Jake's tendency to exaggerate his capabilities during interviews had backfired. Unable to meet the expectations placed on him, Jake's pride had been utterly shattered. It ended up being a needless blemish on his resume. How did I come to know about this? It was actually through my brother Kyle. After graduating from Harvard, Kyle had joined my dad's company. It seemed that he had reconciled with my dad at some point and had learned about my current situation from him, which prompted him to reach out to me. When I met Kyle after so long, he looked much more cheerful than I remembered. While we had a casual conversation at a cafe, he told me about Jake. Jake said he was moving back to his hometown when he quit. Maybe getting his pride crushed twice in a row just broke his spirit. His toxic masculinity really got the better of him. Even though our CEO recognized his abilities, he couldn't get past his own prejudices. Luke, you're as direct as ever, Case said with a gentle smile, and it reminded me of how I used to be. Yes, I wasn't as meek as I had become. I was quite competitive and outspoken, actually. When you used to stand up to Dad as a kid, I always felt a bit satisfied. I'd secretly think, go for it, Luke. What's that supposed to mean? Don't make your youngest sibling a one-man wrecking crew. I made a mock pout, and Kyle grinned mischievously. Before long, we both burst out laughing. The lingering tension between us as siblings felt like it was finally starting to fade. Then, about a year later, Kyle contacted me again with some good news. Sean, the most stubborn of us three, had finally reconciled with our father as well. Shah, who works as a doctor, can be difficult at times, but I know he has a kind heart. It seems my dad's journey of atonement has finally come to an end. When I told Michelle about this, she smiled warmly. That's wonderful, Luke. Yeah, so we're thinking of having a reunion with all the siblings soon. And I'd like to introduce you to my brothers then. Is that okay? What does that mean? Right now, we're sitting across from each other, enjoying French cuisine. This is a restaurant we've been frequenting since we started dating 2 years ago. I pulled out a small box I had been hiding. When I opened it, her eyes lit up, and her cheeks flushed with color. Marry me, Michelle. Are you sure? I'm not exactly young anymore. I'm sure. I want to spend my life with you. When I said that, Michelle looked as though she was about to cry, but nodded. I had once been trapped by the shadows of my past, unable to see my true self. It was her smile that had freed my heart, and now I want to keep seeing that smile forever. I want to marry you too. Thank you, Michelle. I wondered how my dad would react when he heard about my marriage. Looking at her radiant smile, I couldn't help but feel certain he'd be overjoyed.